I had zero idea that I would be a three-time Olympic medalist, first American woman to medal in the summer and the winter Olympics. Like, the Olympics was not even on my radar. They don't believe in Lauryn, the financial planner, or they don't think that an athlete could, have a brain, even though I have 2 degrees and multiple certifications, Like, life is really more about the journey than it is about the actual, like, getting to the destination.
Hey, this is Raina Campbell, your Chief Dream Driver, and welcome to the No Parking Podcast, where through conversations and discussions with creators like yourself, we'll find interesting approaches to help you take your dreams out of park, put them in drive, and ride towards success. Hey, Dream Drivers, welcome to episode 175 of the Dreams and Drive podcast. Today, our guest is Lauryn Williams. Lauryn is a certified financial planner, 4-time Olympian, 3-time Olympic medalist, and the first American woman to medal in both the Summer and Winter Olympic Games. Her company, Worth Winning, offers virtual services to help professional athletes get the answers to the financial questions that matter most to them. And you guys may be sick of hearing me say this if you've listened to the show for a while, but when I was in high school, I was a huge track and field fan. I also was a track and field athlete myself. I ran the 400 meters, 400 meter hurdles, 200 meters. And I wanted to be like the best track and field athlete. I said I wanted to be, but listen, if you check my times, they weren't that good. I'm so excited to have Lauryn on the show today to talk about her journey going from professional athlete to certified financial planner. And what I think you guys will love about this episode with Lauryn is just how real and transparent she is about what it was like to be on the ground, whether it was training for the Olympics or whether it was transitioning from being a professional athlete to running her own business. There's so much that she had to come against, and there was so much that she overcame. And I know there are takeaways that we all can take from her story. Some of the things that we discuss in this episode include Lauryn dealing with being bullied for her natural hair in college, what life is like as a professional athlete, how Lauryn took control of her personal finances and financial literacy after having some run-ins with some bad financial advisors, making the transition from professional athlete to financial planner. And then we talk about how to get sponsorships, the biggest money lesson Lauryn learned, and her favorite keys to success. A few housekeeping notes. If you love this episode, please share it with a friend. You guys know I love when you sharing your Instagram stories, Instagram posts, Twitter, Facebook, wherever. Remember, we are Dreams and Drive across the board on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and you can use the hashtag Dreams and Drive as well. All right, so let's get to the interview. Hope you guys all enjoy Lauryn's story.
Raina, thanks for having me. I'm super pumped to talk about my life story.
Well, I have to preface it for anyone who's listened to the show. And Lauryn, you probably heard me say this like 50 times already, just in like our pre-conversations. So when I was, I want to say middle and high school, I was like obsessed with track and I wanted to be so good, but I don't know. I just never reached the levels of accomplishments that I wanted, right? So it's just so surreal for me to be able to be speaking to you now after meeting you at Podcast Movement and being a guest on your show. So this is definitely a moment in my life that I'm very happy about.
I mean, everybody is a track and field athlete, even if it's only on the inside, a little bit on the outside, like everybody ran track in high school. It doesn't matter what level you made it to. And the fact that you're a track fan, that's really an important thing. So,
yes.
I mean, appreciate you being a fan and loving the sport.
So I love to talk about how things started, right? And going back in time, who we were as children. So what was the young Lauryn up to? What was the things that were really inspiring you? And, what about the world was captivating you as a young child?
As a kid, I have to say I was a bad kid. I'm not even going to tell a lie. I was just into everything. Just a tomboy. I wasn't a bad kid. Wasn't mischievous, but I was definitely always up to something. And I think now looking back on it, that it was like kind of that entrepreneurial spirit that was driving me toward, all the different things that I had my hand in as a child. So, I sold candy. I'd go buy the penny candy from the store and then I'd show up at school and I'd sell the penny candy for double. And they're like, wait, but this is 25 cents at the store. And I'm like, yeah, but you didn't go to the store. I did. So I need to be compensated for that. So it wasn't really like mischievous, but it was like a hustler sort of thing. So I remember that like very clearly, and just, being on the corner with the lemonade stands. And my mom had worked for a catering business, and I go on Saturday mornings there and help them put things together, and I'd be doing the food. So it was just like, there was like all these different aspects of like entrepreneurial life that were like ingrained into my childhood that I think helped me like to get to where I am now, and like really put this particular dream that I'm working on in drive.
It's funny because I really think we would have been friends. So you used to buy the candy and sell it. I used to be like the bank to the people who wanted to buy their own candy but didn't have the money, right? Because I was always a person who, would save. So I had really good savings. So what I would do is I would loan out quarters to people, right? Like on our way to school in the morning, people would stop at the store. But if you didn't have money, you could loan a quarter from me, but then you'd have to pay me back double. So it's like, all right, I give you 25 cents, but you got to give me 50 cents. People, like, I was always known as the girl with the quarters, or the girl who had the money that was loaning it out and always asking for more back. So
we would have been a dynamic duo.
Yes.
Like, I don't have money to buy my candy. Don't worry. Go to the bank over here, the Bank of Raina. Right?
But if you want it at school, you're going to have to, but you can either pay for it double later, right? So it depends if you want it now or want it later. What was the dream for you though back then, Lauryn? Was there something that you really, really had your eyes set on as a child, young adolescent, teenager?
I think the dream for me back then was education. Education was everything to me. And so my parents instilled the importance of education in me, but I also had 5 sisters, 2 brothers. There was not a lot of money in the household. And I knew there wasn't going to be a way for me to pay for like education above and beyond going to, finishing high school. So I was like, how am I going to get to this next level education? Because education is that thing that's going to open doors for me. So the dream for me was to be able to go to college and, to not have to spend a whole lot of money going to college. That was the big dream. Like there wasn't much beyond like be smart. And I even remember like, 5 years old where a lot of people wanted to be like firefighters or doctors or policemen, or, they just kind of had something general that was like that fad or trendy thing that people say. I used to tell people I wanted to be a neonatologist, and they're like, but you're 5. Like, do you even know what that is? And I'm like, yes, they help the babies and they make a lot of money. And so I was like, I have to be really smart so that I can be a doctor, so I can be a neonatologist, so I can get a lot of money. And it's because my godmother was a neonatologist. So, having those good influences around was something that really impacted me, but also, like you said, the how to get to where she is, and that being education, that was like my biggest dream. Like, be the smartest kid in the class, be the most intelligent, and go to this next level of education.
So how did track and field play out into everything? How did that dream sprout? Or was it a dream, or was it just something that you picked up along the way?
Well, I mentioned earlier, I started talking about my entrepreneurial life, but I mentioned earlier that I was a tomboy, and that was like kind of the thing where I didn't know that track and field was kind of like being instilled in me, but I was just like that bad kid that was outside swinging from the jungle gym, running through the neighborhood, just terrorizing everybody. And I started to realize like, like let's race, when you don't have a lot of money and you live in the hood, it's like you make up things to have fun. And I think everybody was into racing. So we'd be in the street, and we'd race. And if you had the wrong shoes on, you get barefoot and then you race. And so what I realized is I started to beat all the girls. Then I started to beat girls that were older than me. Then the boys come around, they talking all this trash. And it's like, oh, you want to race too? Come on, like bring it. I didn't have a passion toward track and field. I had a passion toward like winning, beating people, like being the best I could be at this thing. And just kind of like I said, being that kind of rugged girl that was like super athletic in the neighborhood. And so that's where it kind of started for me, was racing boys that were older than me. Then one of my friend's older brothers started like betting people, and he, tried to make a business out of it.
Was he pimping you?
He was pimping me out. Yes. And so that lasted for every bit of like 7 to 10 days before I got hip to the game and was like, wait. He is not going to be capitalized off of me running up and down this street, sweating all my blood, sweating tears. And I was like, the hustler in me came out again. I was like, I need a cut of what's happening here. So we go around the neighborhood hustling people. I bet you can't beat this girl. And man, I definitely could beat a girl. And then zoom, I'd run right past them. So
So when did you realize that you could like profit from this talent of yours? And I'm not talking about profit like monetarily, but just realizing that this could take you places, your ability to run very fast.
I was a late bloomer in the realization. So like I said, the education part of it was really important for me. And so I've been working really hard to get academic, scholarship money and, keeping my grades right, thinking that was going to be my road to a college education. But my junior year, or actually my sophomore year in high school, these letters started to come in the mail. And I was like, what is this all about? And it was like, hey, we're recruiting you. You fill out this form and tell us more about your performance. We'd be interested in bringing you to our school. And I was like, this is a thing? I had no idea like what an athletic scholarship was. I knew that there was the academic opportunity, but I didn't realize that I had the athletic ability or that someone would pay me, college wise to pursue that. And so that was the first time that a light bulb kind of came on for me where I was like, oh, people will pay for my education, which is the thing I want. And all I got to do is run in this circle, which I'm already doing for fun anyway. Like, this sounds like a great idea.
And it was, right? Like you went to University of Miami. What was like, how were you able to balance it, being an athlete? And I'm pretty sure at that school, it's like athletes, you're an athlete, right? You can't be a part-time athlete at University of Miami. Like, how did you balance that while your goal was still to graduate and still to do well?
I think I did a really good job because I had natural ability in track and field. And there's also a really good support program. So, I excelled on the track because, like you said, that competitive spirit, not so much because I wanted to be an Olympian or anything like that. But I went to the school at a really great time where my freshman year, the football team won the national championship. My sophomore year, they made it back to the national championship, and even though they lost. So, football tends to kind of run the energy in an athletic department, especially in a school that's like a Division I school. And it was just, this feeling that took over the whole. It was a culture that I'm gonna just go with culture. And so winning was a culture in the whole department. Everybody was all about putting their best foot forward in whatever they were competing in because we had the best football team and all eyes were on us. And so it made us all feel like we needed to step up to that next level in our competitions. And so it was just like, I don't have an option to not be great at this thing. And I want to repay my coach for the opportunity of getting this free education. It was easy for me to handle it on the track. And like you said, I showed up because I wanted to be a student, not because I wanted to be an athlete. And so I wasn't going to compromise in that area either. So where other people struggle for time management and things like that, it was just like both of these things are equally important. She gave me the free education. And so I owe this to her. The energy around this athletic department is that of winners. And I'm definitely a winner. And my education is the most important thing to me because I know education is going to lead me to the path that I want to go, whatever that may be. And so I just equally pursued those the whole way, not even thinking about like, oh, this is so hard, or that it just didn't cross my mind.
Was there anything, though, that you were struggling with during this moment or during this time in your life?
Let's see. Things that I came up against, I would say, like there's some light bullying. So the part of my story is I decided to do the natural. So I went to high school where I was the only black girl in my graduating class. There were, I think, 5 black boys, but I was the only black girl that graduated. In the end, like our senior year, all the white girls in my class were like, oh, let's cut our hair. And what I didn't realize, I had spent probably the last 4 years trying to get my hair to shoulder length. I had a nice perm. It was flowy and wavy and it was doing everything right finally. Mm-hmm. And they all said as a senior thing, we should cut our hair, which, white people's hair grows back in like 5 minutes. And like,
I hear not so fast.
Right. Not so fast. That instilled the natural hair care journey for me. I had a short haircut. I rode that out for the summer. And then I was like, like my hair was growing. It was nappy at the root. I was having to get it. It was just like, it was a lot. And so I went off to college and I was like, there's a new person. There's a new me. None of these people know me anyway. I'm going to reinvent myself. So I started with braids when I got to college. And the first time I had to take those braids out, it revealed that kind of like half perm. It was a short haircut, half perm, like you said, half natural. And I mean, the way that I was picked on and the way that I was like abused because I had this nappy hair, was a real tough time in my life. It was like, Who am I from an identity standpoint? Why don't people like me? Like, why is nappy hair a bad thing? And, in a place that's as culturally diverse as Miami, is, you would think that something like that wouldn't exist, but there was definitely a lot of like hazing. And so it just, it really impacted my self-confidence, and made me kind of do some soul searching into like, who do I want to be? And, India Ari's song is like, I am not my hair. I didn't realize that I wasn't my hair for a good, probably 2 years, along this journey.
What's so interesting? So I remember like, me when I was obsessed with track, like one of the people that I looked up to and I loved her style was like FloJo, right? Like she was known for her hair. She was known for her outfit. She was known for making like this statement on the field. Like it's funny because now when I think of track and field, at least like with people that I've seen, like you see it as a place where you can express yourself in some ways. Like were you experiencing this hazing and stuff from people on the team or just the overall campus culture in general?
It was other female athletes. It wasn't people on my team specifically, but yeah. And so that was the thing. Like you said, we talked about like how awesome the athletic department was from an energy standpoint, from a football player, sort of like you said, bringing the energy on helping us compete. But there was still, like you said, because we're such a small athletic department, and we're such a close knit community, and we're all kind of quarantined in one part of campus. It's kind of like, it's that family sort of bickering. And like I said, in the moment when you're new and you don't know these people that well, you don't feel like it's like a family sort of bickering. Like it really impacted, like you said, my identity and my confidence. But it was generally other girls from other sports teams that were picking on me. And, my team was actually pretty good about it. And they all ended up like, most of them had natural hair. So they showed me like tips and tricks and what to do. And, it's just hard when your hair is short and you kind of in that in-between phase. So
yeah, you really got to embrace it. And it really takes a lot of confidence just because of the way that society is set up, right? They're not out there promoting that as beauty, right? So if you look in the mirror and you're questioning like, oh my God, like my head is big, or oh my God, my head is small. Like you really have to embrace yourself and learn to love yourself as well. But thinking about where you are in your journey right now, where we're at in the story and where you are now, right? Like looking back at the Lauryn then, do you think that she knew that she was one day going to be where you are now?
I had zero idea, that I would be a 3-time Olympic medalist, first American woman to medal in the summer and the Winter Olympics. Like the Olympics was not even on my radar. And, running a financial company, I probably would have said that more so than I would have said any of those sports things. Yeah.
So you were into finances back then?
Exactly. I was a finance major.
Okay.
And I was, pretty strict with my own budget and, just trying to figure those things out, realizing that you couldn't spend more than you had. And like you said, the entrepreneurial spirit that I had from childhood I was always trying to make money, save money, keep a little bit to the side. Like you said, I was kind of like a natural saver, just like you. So I was financially responsible, but I didn't really know what it meant to be like financially literate. And, unfortunately, college doesn't actually teach you that. Like, you learn all these things about economics and about hedge funds and about, all these different topics, but it's not personal finance when you're a finance major. Now there is actually like a certified financial planning major, and I'm glad that they offered that for the new school kids. But back in my day, that wasn't necessarily a thing. So I was learning everything I could about finance, and some of the things I learned were helpful, but it wasn't directly related to personal finance. And so I was always trying to figure out like, how am I going to use my knowledge around money in order to be financially free?
All right, so we're going to have to get back to that, but I definitely want to get to a part of the story that I think is really critical to who you are today, is the Olympic story, right? And there's so many, like, you can just list, maybe just tell us what the gold medals that you got, so then we can get to the part of the story that I want to focus on, because we could talk about Olympics all day long, but I don't want to make this only about your Olympic journey.
I gotcha. So I am a 2004 silver medalist in the 100 meters at the Athens Games. 2008 was the rough year. I made it to the Olympics, but I got 4th place. If anybody wants to know, 4th place is far worse than 8th place when you're at the Olympics. You'd much rather just be like out of the running than so close to making the podium and not. And then in 2012, I got a gold medal for the 4x1 relay. And then in 2014, I switched over and became a bobsledder instead of a track and field athlete, switched to the Winter Olympics and did the 2-person bobsled, where we earned a silver medal.
That's so amazing. Congratulations. So there's 2 things that I really want to talk about. And one of these you might not it might not be the best of memories, right? But I remember in just doing my research on you, so there were 2 moments in those games where you dropped the baton, right? And that was a moment that, and along all our dream driving journeys, we might be putting in all the work, right? You might be doing everything right. And then when the moment comes, there might be we missed it, right? Or something goes wrong. What did you learn from that moment?
Definitely in the moment, you don't feel like you learned anything, but looking back on it, you learn so much. And so 2004 was the first time that baton, exchange didn't go well. And what I now look back on it and say is like, chemistry is everything. Mm-hmm. Creating a good vibe between you and yourself and someone else is going to be imperative for you to succeed at anything you want to do. Whatever dream it is you're trying to put in drive, it's going to take teamwork. One of the cliches is teamwork makes the dream work. Mm-hmm. And you really have to be focused on creating the energy around like what success looks like, because you're right. The 4 girls that we had could have easily broken the world record. But guess what? You can't break a world record if you don't get that stick around the track. So
right?
Opportunity just flat out lost. And it was really because we didn't have good chemistry. There was not good communication amongst the coaches and telling us what we needed to be doing. They didn't have a lot of faith in each of the athletes. So there were just so many things that went wrong as it pertains to not running the actual race, but off the track. That didn't give us the best chance at success. So I learned in 2004 that was a thing that I didn't want to repeat. I didn't want to like live that experience in the way that we did. And then 2008, he said we talked about it. We talked about what happened in 2004. We talked about not letting that be our story. And one of the things we talked about was like, well, what happens if it goes wrong? We need to know the rules. So in knowing the rules, it's like, what you can do when, like you said, when poop hits the fan. It's like, well, how do I pivot? How do I recover from this? Because what I'm not going to do is just give up if it goes bad. And so we spent a lot of time learning the rules, in addition to, like you said, practicing our actual exchanges. Well, guess what? When we dropped that one, I turned around and I went back because I remember them saying in the rules that like, as long as you didn't impede anyone, you could still finish the race and not be disqualified. And so in my mind, I was like, well, this didn't go right again, but I'm going to pick up the stick and I'm going to just have to run all these people down because we can still make it to the finals, even if we're the last ones in. And yeah, it didn't go quite like that. But so the first one was like about chemistry, the second thing about rules. And then the third time when I actually did get the medal, it was about this idea of working together and doing your part. So a lot of people don't realize that even though I earned a gold medal, that I wasn't the person who ran in the final race where, the world record was broken. So I ran a preliminary round. And so some people were like, oh, well, you ain't really win no medal then. Like you weren't the one that won that. But guess what? There wouldn't have been a final round if there wasn't a preliminary round, right?
Yep.
And then the other thing on top of that is like everybody doing their part to make sure that everybody, like you said, so I knew chemistry was an important thing. I went out of my way to make sure that those girls had great chemistry and that they were all on the same page because I knew that's what made us fail before. And I knew it didn't matter how fast all 4 people were. It mattered that if our chemistry was good and if we were all on the same page, what was going to happen. And so being able to step to the sideline and, know that we put the best 4 out there and that I did my part to help put the best 4 out there made me feel like I earned the medal just as much as anybody else. Like, of course, I ran my race in my preliminary round, but the things that you contribute that people don't see are those things that you can really take pride in. And so just this idea of teamwork and doing the behind the scenes work and, there being a greater cause than just yourself and your time to shine was one of the other things that I learned.
That's such a beautiful story. And I think it just shows how, our journeys are not always going to be smooth. But I think in that experience, that's where we get those lessons, right? Like it took you that third Olympic, you learned, right? And you were able to give your experience. I'm not sure about whether the other team members were also as experienced as you, but now you could kind of be like this is no offense, but you could be like the grandmother of the team in the sense that you had this wisdom that, let's say you didn't know that. And let's say everybody on the team was fresh. You might have not been able to give them an insight that they may not have known before. So I feel like everything works out as it should, right?
Yes. And I mean, it would not have been the same story. You're right. Everybody wants to like show up, win the gold medal. Life is perfect. Oh, I'm a 6-time gold medalist. But like, honestly, like we get there, like that story is going to be boring. Like, what's your life if you show up every day and all you do is win? Like, it's not the most exciting life and you're going to feel pretty unfulfilled. Like, life is really more about the journey than it is about the actual, like, getting to the destination.
You know what that reminds me of? So, like, when I was in school, you're going to laugh because we talked about, like, my parents on your podcast. But when I was in school, I was a really good student, right? And I used to get so upset, like, if I got a B or a B plus. And my mom told me, she was like, you know what, Raina? One day I want you to get an F. And she didn't tell me that in the sense of like she wanted me to fail, but she just wanted me to realize that you're not always going to win, but that doesn't make you a loser.
I mean, I think it's a really good point too. Like, if you can't appreciate winning if you don't ever fail, and so like wishing an F on you, I'm like, that's harsh. Can't you just give you a C or something? But like,
she meant, you know, they're Jamaicans are dramatic. They're dramatic.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the things that I also want to talk about is like, you know, once you come back for the Olympics, at least in my head, I'd be like Olympic famous, right? Like, you know, you definitely have eyes on you. I'm pretty sure like when you win the Olympics, do you win prize money? I just wonder, like, do you get anything from winning the Olympics?
Yeah, so that's one of the kind of like biggest misconceptions is about how the whole Olympic world works. So a lot of people think that we all are poor and we live in our cars and, you know, the Olympics is an amateur sport, so we're not allowed to make money. And it's true in the sense that the actual Olympics doesn't pay us anything. So you go, they provide this venue, they provide this, you know, kind of platform for you to go and compete, but they don't actually give you any money. So where do you get the money from? It works different for every single country. And I want to throw out there that the United States is the only country that doesn't have any government funding. So like, you know, most other countries, you win and they give you $1 million home, or they give you X number, you know, acres of land. They give you, you know, cash money as a prize. Like that's a set thing that the government is providing for you. Sometimes you get like lifetime, admittance to the military, which comes with all the military benefits instead of, you know, you actually being in the military.
Wow. I might try to, like, you know, get into the Olympics and just
right. But you need to do it for another country. Because with the USA, you don't get none of that.
Jamaica,
so our government doesn't help us.
I doubt Jamaica got anything. I'm just playing.
Right. But yeah, so in the United States Olympic Committee offers what they call Operation Gold prize money. And so a gold, a bronze, and a silver medal will get you, I think a gold medal gets you like 30,000, a bronze, then 20, then 10. I don't remember the exact numbers anymore. And I think they actually just upped the prize money, which is good.
That's good.
But, you know, I think we can all agree that if you've trained for something for multiple years, the expenses that you go into and you're training full time, that 30,000 is not going to go a long way. That's a school teacher salary. Like, so yeah, the rich and the famous part of it is kind of a myth. But then there's also sponsorship. So like you said, I don't want to not tell the whole story. Generally, like you said, you're an athlete that shows a lot of promise. Leading up to the Olympic Games, some sponsors will reach out to you. Some of the Olympic sponsors will reach out to you, and you'll have an opportunity to make money, you know, by signing a sponsorship deal with them, using their product, you know, promoting their product, et cetera. And then in track and field in particular, we mostly work off of like the way we're able to call ourselves professional athletes is we do a sponsorship deal with a shoe company. So, you know, a Puma, a Asics, a Adidas, a Nike, you know, Saucony, whoever will, as we're coming out of college, talk to us, negotiate a salary, and then we'll also get bonuses and incentives based on the times that we run. And that's every year. So the other thing that a lot of people don't know is that the Olympics happens every 4 years, but there is a regular season that's happening for us every single year. And that's where we're making our money. We're earning prize money at the different races that are offered in addition to this salary if you're the caliber athlete where a shoe company feels like it's worthwhile to sponsor you. So there are opportunities, but there are also like it's very open-ended and objective for the ways that you can make money. So there are plenty of athletes that, like you said, work 3 jobs, live in their car, work 80-hour weeks, and then go to practice, et cetera, et cetera. But there's also some athletes, you know, Michael Phelps of the world that make a lot of money based on the sponsorship money.
So you had a degree in finance, like, you were still competing. How were you managing your finances? Like, how did this world of finances come into play in these years?
Yeah, funny you should ask that. So like you said, I was a finance major, and I did realize once I started, so I was 20 years old. I was a junior in college when I got the opportunity to become a professional athlete. It was the Olympic year. I had run the second fastest time in the world, and it was immediately like, hey, this is America's fastest woman right now. Like, this is a pretty big deal. This young girl could do a really good job at the Olympics. So the sponsors started coming out of the woodworks and offering me contracts. So I ended up with a six-figure contract at 20 years old.
Oh, wow.
I was
That's a
super
lot of money.
fortunate. Exactly. And like I said, I came from a family of 5 sisters, 2 brothers, not a lot of financial literacy, not a lot of income to be had. So there weren't any conversations about money or how to handle money or, what to do with this amount of money, because there was no like investment accounts or things like that within my household. So I knew the importance of hiring someone to help me. I knew that there was value in having an expert in my life that could guide me. And I knew that I wasn't an expert despite, going to school for 3.5 years in finance. So I reached out to someone and I was connected based, a family friend connected me with someone. But what I didn't know is that there are lots of different kinds of financial advisors out there. Financial planners, certified financial planners, financial advisors, people who sell insurance, who call themselves financial advisors, and the list goes on and on and on. And there's not a lot of, regulation around what you can call yourself. So, you can't call yourself doctor if you're not like a medical doctor or, you got your PhD. But, you don't want somebody who's a doctor and then they're actually a PhD operating on you, right? So
right.
It's one of those kind of things where it's like, how do you know who is the person that's certified to be able to help me? And I didn't have one of those people. So this guy sold me a bunch of insurance, some investment products, and, sent me on my merry way. And I had questions like, how do you make a budget? I didn't know the basics of like, what do I do? Like I had my college budget, but it was like, oh, my college budget was based on my $1,000 a month income. Like, whereas now I'm making over $200,000 a year. It's like my budget has changed and I need to set money aside for taxes. Like, how much do I need to set aside though? And how do I plan for that? Can I buy a house? Can I move out from living with my college roommate? I had so many just basic financial questions that I felt like I was hiring an advisor to provide advice on those things. And I didn't get advice on any of it because his job was to sell me investment products. And there's nothing wrong with investing, but being sold a product that somebody earns a commission on is not the same thing as getting financial advice. That's being sold a product and they're earning their income and, your investments could grow and they could become something. But, like I said, what about all the things above and beyond that? So I fired that guy after he lost some money for me and didn't do a very good job of explaining how he lost the money. Hired another guy that worked with professional athletes and thought my life was going to be a lot better. I explained to him what I felt like I wasn't getting. And he's like, yeah, we do all of that. Well, the only thing they did differently besides manage the investment accounts was charge me $10,000 to pay my bills.
What? So a month?
Girl, no, $10,000 for the year, but still.
Just to what?
Yeah, so now this is the beginning of auto pay. So all my stuff was on auto pay, but it's a little bit clunky. And I was nervous because I spent about 3 months of the year in Europe. So sometimes the bills, you'd be late or you had to remember while you're in Europe in the middle of the night and all this kind of stuff. So I was like, oh, this is a great service. But really, I could have just put all those things on auto pay. And some, like I said, most of them were on auto pay. So long story short there, that gentleman ended up caught up in a scandal. So he worked with a bunch of NFL players. They gave millions of dollars to him for an investment for a casino. The casino never opened. They all lost 100% of their money.
Oh my gosh. What did he do with the money?
Well, the casino got the money. So like whoever was they were building the casino. So I'm assuming they used it to lay the concrete and buy the machines. But the problem was that they never got the state legislation never passed to them for the casino allow itself to open. So yeah, they started building something before they actually had the permit, if you will, which is what the problem was.
Why do you think athletes are, what's the word, easy predators for financial mismanagement?
Yeah, that's easy. Lack of financial literacy among themselves, their age. So you just can't have an experience when you're younger. What does any average 21-year-old know right when they get out of school? We're all trying to navigate, our first job. And, you might have lived on your own in college, but it wasn't the same as like what it means to be a grown up in adulting. So you add to that, we have that same situation as a 20 or 20 something year old athlete, but add to that a big income. This is not typical entry level, $30,000 or $40,000 where, you still got to live a little bit frugally and get yourself on a plan. This is, like I said, hundreds of thousands of dollars and sometimes millions of dollars. You just don't have the skills to be able to manage it. And like I said, depending on where you come from, you don't have anyone in your household that's seeing money like that or has the skills to manage it because they might have lived paycheck to paycheck their whole life. Mm-hmm. So there's no infrastructure in place, no resources, no community of people that can help you succeed and help you do what's responsible, even if you're looking for it. And so what do? You go and you look for an expert, or an expert comes in and flags you down, but they don't always have your best interests at heart. And so you got to be able to sort through that. That's everybody. We all got to be able to sort through like what we need to do to hire someone and what it looks like if someone is a good fit versus a bad fit. And that's just knowing the right questions to ask, which we unfortunately also don't do, which is why I created like a actual sheet that tells people like, here's what you should be looking for in a financial planner. Because it's something I'm so passionate about after the way I was treated.
So yeah, let's talk about that. Like, how did you start to take control of your finances and your financial literacy and start to change the narrative for yourself, especially being a professional athlete at the time?
Yeah. So I was, like I said, I was noticing the gaps in the service that I was receiving. And I was asking people, like, is there someone else that I can hire that, helps me with these things? And, I was saying specifically the stuff that I was looking for. And they're like, oh, you want to be a financial advisor. You want to get your Series 7. And so Series 7 is associated with exactly what I just told you, the commission-based person that sells you a product. It's not a service, but, it's this institutional product that it could or could not make you money. And I was like, this just doesn't feel right. Like I was studying and I was like, this doesn't seem like the thing I want. And so I kept asking around, like, what's the thing that I need to do? And eventually a Google search is what led me to the certified financial planning coursework. Which is sad to say, but I was so grateful when it happened. I was just typing in different financial terms and different things that I was looking for. And I was like, this seems a lot more in line with what I've been trying to get help with and what I'd like to be able to help people with. And so blindly, I was still competing in sport. I enrolled in the certified financial planning coursework. And I said, I'm going to be the change that I want to see. There's no one that's offering this thing for us where we get help with the financial basics so that we can, in fact, accumulate wealth and we can, in fact, be financially free when the time comes. We need help with the basics, and investing is all fine and good, but like, how am I supposed to get there if I don't know the starting point? And I need to educate myself. So I was reading everything I could get my hands on in addition to being enrolled in the certified financial planning coursework.
So why the decision to end your professional career as a track and field athlete?
That's a tough one. Basically, my body changed. Okay. I'd been competing for 10 years. I wasn't quite as passionate about it. After time, it takes its toll. Time takes its toll, and you can't do anything forever. You know that, but you don't really like to admit that as an athlete. You think that this thing is going to go on, and then you start to see the signs of like, it's a lot harder to get warmed up at practice, and something is always ailing me and hurting or sore. So these little things start to creep in, and they create doubt in your mind. But ultimately, what it was for me was that I was having a really hard time managing my weight. And what I realized now looking back on it was like, my body was just changing. It's the same way that, you're a little kid and you grow up and then, puberty comes along and your body changes. And then, you get a little bit older and you get like these childbearing hips, they call it. Mm-hmm. And then you get a little bit older. And then, for women, it's like menopause. Like these are just like the phases of life. And so I was really just fighting my body with, I need to be this skinny. I need to be this weight and I need to starve myself, or I need this nutritionist. And it was just like my body and my body type and my family's body type, we're a rounder group. We're a little bit more voluptuous, and it just wasn't going to be sustainable for a long time. So I outgrew that body, and I had to decide like, well, what am I going to do next? I'm still an elite level athlete, but I'm not elite at track anymore. And so I could have continued to compete for 3 or 4 years and, make a couple $1,000s here or there. But if I didn't want to compete, if I wasn't going to be able to do it at the level, if I wasn't
You're a winner. You are a winner, right? Like you came from that winner culture. Yeah. Like me, I probably could because I never won. But you could. Yeah. So did you, thinking about the feeling though, because I feel like that can be something that a lot of us can experience, whatever it is, whatever dream that we're driving, right? There might be a point where you got to put it in park and figure out, all right, pull up the GPS and figure out the next path. Like, what was the feeling like for you though? If you can remember, like, how did you work through that emotional work? I'm sure it was painful to like hang up the cleats, right?
Oh, yeah, it was definitely tough. And one of the hardest things and one of the things I most like helping athletes with when they come to me is figuring out a plan for the transition well before the transition happens, because no matter what, it's going to be a hugely emotional experience. And there's some things you can do to help yourself, like you said, being financially stable and, setting yourself up network wise, that's going to help the transition, but it's still going to hit you where it hurts, in realizing like, hey, I have to put this thing behind me and I have to move on to something else. So there's no like real clear answer. You do a lot of soul searching. You do a lot of thinking about like, what is my identity outside of this thing? And I think that's another really good point, is that you need to be in the moment of competing, but also be thinking about who am I outside of sports, even when you're competing in sports, because so often society tells us that all we are is an athlete. And, we're so focused on it that we think all we are is an athlete, but there's so many layers to any person that exists. And we need to start be thinking of ourselves as more than an athlete from the very beginning to help with that transition.
So who were you outside of track and field? And, how did that thinking help you start Worth Winning?
Outside of track and field, I decided that, you said I was someone who wanted to help others. That was the thing that was going to be the most important thing for me, was figuring out, how can I serve others? What can I serve others in? And what do I know that I can share with others? I felt like I said, there was this gap for the way that young professionals were being served. I was asking my other friends that weren't athletes, like what they were doing with their finances. And everybody was like, wait, girl, don't be getting all in my business. Don't ask me about that. Like, don't you know you're not supposed to talk about money? And I was like, oh, okay. So this is a real problem that needs to be dived into. The other thing I was really passionate about was food. And so, like I said, I started to gain weight, and I started, working with a nutritionist, and then I started working with a chef. This is still during my track career. But what it did was turn on a light bulb for me. I had always really enjoyed cooking. That's something that's kind of ingrained in my family, and like everybody in the family cooks. But I didn't know a lot about like what opportunities existed in food. And so having that nutritionist and having that chef with me for the end part of my career was so eye-opening into the opportunities that exist around food. And so I really wanted to share that with people as well. So I was thinking about like starting a food truck to show people that it's not really about like health food or vegan or, this or that, but it's about just like eating real food. And that real food can taste good without, all the processed ingredients that exist. So like one of the things I like to do is use like natural sweeteners like a honey or maple syrup or cassava syrup. Like there's so many different options out there besides that like sugar that's made in a factory sort of deal. And so just like helping people like realize that you don't have to be limited to, this diet or this box. You can eat real food and it tastes amazing and it'd be good for you, but it's not based. I didn't want to market it as, health food or vegan food or whatever, there's so many labels you got to put on something. I just wanted to be like, oh, this is a really good restaurant or a really good food truck. And then people kind of find out on their own that there's, like I said, no additives, no preservatives, no sugar, no processed flour, blah, blah, blah. So you see, I took a different path.
I was like, girl, you're not doing that.
Right. But yeah, I realized that was a really big part of my identity. And so like how to embrace food and also embrace, the financial aspects of like how I could help people. And one of the things I learned ultimately about myself that decided, that made me turn away from like pursuing food full time was that I didn't want to be slave to the kitchen. I love to cook. I think it's an enjoyable thing. It's like a thing that helps me relieve stress. And, it's something that I'm passionate about, but it was not something I wanted to be tied to having to do. Mm-hmm. Whereas with the finances, it's something I wake up every day and I'm like, this is a new adventure. I don't mind being tied to this thing. And I don't feel like I'm slaving away, like I'm slave to financial planning. I feel like every day I get to wake up and help people. Whereas I felt like if I was going to be cooking, I was going to like, oh my God, I got to cook again. And I got to cook by this time. And I got to prep this. And, it was going to start to limit me because, you got to have some sort of menu if you're doing a restaurant. Like you can't be freestyling all the time.
Yeah, that's so important. I feel like for all of us, right, it's like picking what we want to do next. Like we really want to ask ourselves, like, do we really want to do it? Like, do we just love it? Or is it something we want to make a career or a business out of? Because like, let's say like, I love painting. Well, no, I don't. Let me say something that's true. Like I love, like I like fashion, right? Like I like shopping, but do I want to be a stylist, a celebrity shopper? Like, no, do I want to be a personal shopper? No. So you have to really make that distinction, because I think sometimes we get caught up in pursuing things that we like and that we're passionate about, but you don't always have to make everything you're passionate about what it is that you start a business around. It's really important.
Yes, I love that. I love it. I mean, it's so hard to tell sometimes because, like it's super trendy now to like you have the work-life balance and leave your 9 to 5 to pursue your passion. And, getting paid to do your passion is like the dream thing that everybody's going after. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but you really need to understand like what that means for you. And is that really like the way that you can best pursue your passion? Is that the thing that's going to make you most happy? And so I think sometimes we start following someone else's dream or, trying to fit into this box of how society tells us we need to live out our passions and pursue our best life and all that. And it's really tailored to like what's going to be the best thing for you, because what you're passionate about, exactly like you said, doesn't mean that you need to make money from it because it's your passion. It's awesome when you can make money from your passion, but that's not by any means a requirement, and you don't have to be forcing it all the time to make those things work.
Along your entrepreneurial journey and building the business of Worth Winning, right? And your platform, what was like a real business hurdle that you came across? Like something that you were like, oh, wow, like I didn't know that this mattered when building a brand or starting a business.
Ooh, there are so many things.
We're all in this, right? We're all like, there's so many things I could think of as well, like along my own journey. I'm
going to go with, the financial aspect of it. And,
like
you said, being a financial planner, people are like, wait, what? You ain't had your finances organized, girl? But it's one of those things where you set up this plan and you say you're going to go after this, and then everything comes at you that you don't expect. So you have this emergency budget. You set some capital aside to get this thing going, but then it's like, you need these new fancy pens that have hair on top of them as giveaway things. And you get wrapped up in like wanting this to be the best business from the very first day and trying to make things perfect. And you start spending all out like, I got to invest in myself. I got to invest in myself and get this. I got to invest in myself and get that. And before you know it, you got like 50 pieces of software, the Bentley of software on day one, when you probably could have started with like, Google Calendars versus a fancy scheduling software that cost X number of dollars. So just putting all those bells and whistles on, because I was so eager to be good at it. And I was so eager to get going and showing people that I wanted to put my best foot forward for them. And realizing that like the actual service of financial planning is the product, not all the fancy screen things and, spreadsheets. And, there's a really basic way to get to the correct answer. And of course you can add these bells and whistles, but they're not absolutely necessary. So I would say one of the biggest obstacles is like having that discussion with myself on like, okay, you need to get a real budget. Like you're tracking all this, but you're not really on a budget anymore, Lauren. You're just tracking your expenses, which is different.
Did you find that it was hard for you to like publicly announce this transition, being that people had known you for so long as being this athlete? Or did you find like it was pretty easy to start getting clients and actually get the business going?
Oh my goodness, it's like a therapy session. So that was definitely one of the hardest things that I went through. And that was yet another identity crisis. So it's like you said, I'm trying to decide who I am, life after sport. I decide that I am this thing. And then I started and think that people are going to respect me and love it and, and clamor to it in the way that they have, clamor to me in general. And then I realized that people, some people only like Lauryn the athlete. They don't care for Lauryn the financial planner. They don't believe in Lauryn the financial planner, or they don't think that an athlete could, have a brain, even though I have 2 degrees and multiple certifications, And so there was like this whole nother like, oh, I'm never going to be good at this because no one believes in me. And then I had to realize like, it's not about what everyone else believes. It's about, me, like you said, creating a brand. And, there's 300 million people in America. So the few people that are in my inner circle, my 100, a couple hundred people, or even that wider net of people who know me, my 8,000 Instagram followers, just because they're interested as me as a track and field athlete and they're not interested in, getting their personal finances organized, doesn't mean that this is not a thing worth pursuing. There are 75 million millennials, and that's my target market. I can't serve 75 million people. So there's more than enough people, that I will be able to reach out to get help, or not to get help, to help. And I just need to like go about like finding a new pool of people to introduce myself to. So yeah, it was definitely like a big transition to be able to say, okay, I am now not, no longer Lauryn the athlete. I'm Lauryn the financial planner. And then also like figuring out how to use Lauryn the athlete, as leverage to, open doors for me as Lauryn the financial planner, but not make it, like you said, become about that thing again. So sometimes I go to networking events and I wouldn't tell anybody that I was, an Olympian or anything, because I was trying to get them to take me serious as a financial planner. And then I realized I was kind of shooting myself in the foot because it was a cool speaking thing, that gave me a platform that other people in the networking thing didn't have. And so then it was a way for me to be able to have a conversation with people. And it was really hard initially because I didn't understand how to direct the conversation. So it would come out some sort of way that I was an Olympian, and then the conversation would just go straight down the Olympic road. And I'm like, no, I want to talk to you about my financial business. So it's really about getting the confidence to redirect people and say like, yes, that's a really cool thing about me, but let me tell you about this. And start to show people who I am versus letting them tell me who they want me to be for them.
It's interesting that you say that, because I remember when I met you at Podcast Movement, I think you were with Jamila. I don't remember who you were with, but I remember being introduced to you and your face just looked familiar. And I couldn't like put my finger on where I've seen your face before. And I think I asked you like, hey, did you ever like run track or something? Like I couldn't, and you didn't tell me that you were an Olympic athlete, right? You were like, yeah. I'm like, where? And you were like, University of Miami. And I'm like, okay, well, I ran track in high school. So wait. So I looked at your card. I think I like turned around and Googled you real quick. And I was like, oh my gosh, right? But then I realized like, okay, we're at a podcasting conference, but I had to tell you like, but I was like the biggest track fan. So we're able to bond over that. But this like just goes to show that I think there's things that we all struggle with. And on this dream driving journey, there's going to be moments of identity crisis, but it's working through that. That's where like we really, really do like, we find out so much about ourselves. And you know what that also made me think about, Lauryn, is this whole idea of like, sometimes you just will exist in multiple circles, right? And the circles don't always have to like come together, and that's okay. Like you will always have your athlete circle that you'll be able to flow in. And now you have this new circle that you're able to dominate in. And I think that's where people need to understand is like there really are riches in the niches, right? Like you can find your niche, you can find that thing that makes you special, but you can have multiple niches, and it's okay to be able to float in between like different circles,
Yes, you need to be versatile. Like you said, you can't be just this one thing. We are all multifaceted in the various aspects of our personality and the various things that we're interested in. So it's completely fine to be like, oh, I'm going to choir practice tonight and, to be with my Jesus people. And then, I'm going to trap yoga later because I love trap music.
Yeah, do they have trap yoga?
That is a real thing. What? I learned about it from a friend. So I was like, wait, what?
That is hilarious. I have a question from our listeners, and I actually asked her because I know she is somebody that would have a great question. So my friend Imani Oliver, she's a professional triple jumper, and she's also was recently the bronze medalist at the U.S. Outdoor Championships in track and fields. And her question is, what's one resource you wish that you had when you were an athlete that you still see a need for now?
Ooh. I would say access to unbiased information. It's really, really important to get somebody that's going to give you objective advice and realize that like, oh, hey, I don't have the answer, but like, let's look up the answer together, or, let's try to figure this thing out. But everybody seems to have some sort of agenda. And so the one resource I'd love to have is like that mentor kind of person that, doesn't want money from me, doesn't want anything at all aside from to see me win, and is willing to invest the time in helping me understand the things I don't know. So even as it pertains to hiring like a financial planner, if I had someone that was an objective person to sit in that room with me and it's like, hey, I never hired a financial planner either, but you make a list of questions and I'll make a list of questions. Like, just having someone else there in your corner to kind of be able to see the red flags or be able to call bullshit, if you will, would have been a super helpful thing. And to kind of say like, oh, well, this is what I heard in the meeting. Did you hear this as well? And to know that, like you said, there was no fee for that or no cost. It was just like, I want to see you do good. And so, let's go on this journey together.
What can athletes do to gain the publicity necessary to garner sponsorships? Because as you said, I know you said sponsorships are very important if you're a professional athlete. So for those people who are on that track now, what can they do?
It's about creating a brand that tells your story and telling your authentic story, because so frequently we see, people try to make up a new persona on social media and it's not really who they authentically are. And then, things kind of hit the fan and things don't go well when you're not your authentic self. So really have confidence in, like you were talking about, the riches being in the niches. Like whatever your thing is, if you like playing the guitar as an athlete, as a side thing, like show the world that, because you never know when a guitar company is going to come up and say like, wow, we thought that was really cool. And, we'd love to have you on our ad or, get you a sponsorship. Like that's not a normal sponsorship that's just out there to be had. But by you telling your story, it creates an opportunity for you. Mm-hmm. And it's a unique avenue where you don't have to compete against anybody because you're probably the only one that does guitaring all the time or, with this particular guitar, whatever the case may be. So like show the authentic aspects of yourself and don't be afraid to tell your story. It's a lot of work, I will say that. But, if this is your job and you're trying to figure out a way to earn income, then it's worth doing. Putting in the work to create a social media platform to be able to tell you, and it's really valuable too, to be able to tell your story versus have someone tell your story for you. And that's one of the things I love about being on podcasts is like, I get to say out of my own mouth, like what Lauryn Williams' life was and what I was thinking at age this or that. Because, a writer is going to write the story and it may be good and it may be read by thousands, but they're going to tell it in their way. And they didn't live the 35 years of my life that I lived. Like, no one knows me better than me. So let me tell my story.
I love that you mentioned that. I actually have a friend. And it's funny because I was saying that, like, when you think of Princeton, you don't think about like professional athletes. But I have a friend who graduated from Princeton, Karan Reed, and he actually is in the NFL. But he is a man of faith, and he's a great singer, and he's always doing these like YouTube covers with his guitar. And I'm like, Karan, like you could definitely like be like the singing football player or whatever. And he's he does listen and he does have a few, but I can see that he's still not 100%. I'm going to have him listen to this and be like, Lauryn said so. You need to get with it. Mm-hmm. So thinking back about, your life and, life after gold, life before gold, and just everything you've learned throughout your career, Lauryn, what do you think was like the biggest money lesson that you've learned?
I would say that advice and conversation is key. I just told my story about having two crappy advisors. I have an option to say I'm never going to work with another advisor again and to, not start this business and, not pursue my finances any further, because what we frequently do is we're struggling with something. We're embarrassed to tell people that we're struggling with something. And we just kind of go into this shell, and that is what kind of like allows bad things to fester. And then it ends up becoming a financial catastrophe to where you don't have a choice but to reach out to someone else because you're drowning. So I would say to not wait until you're drowning, to be having financial conversations with your friends, discussions being open, because, you talk to your friend and say, hey girl, what are you doing with your student loans? And you're like, ooh, I'm ignoring my loans. And then she's like, well, what are you doing with your loans? You're like, oh, I'm on the pay as you earn plan. And you're like, wait, what? I didn't even know that was a thing. And so now you've learned something. Your friend's not an expert at, student loans or finances or anything, but now you've learned something that can help you. And here you were over here suffering and getting ready to let your loans go into default. So just really the value of having conversations, and then the value of also hiring an expert. Like you said, I was scarred by 2 people, but I still realized that there was value in someone who knew this. I didn't find those right people initially, but it was worth it for me to keep looking for someone that was going to be able to provide me objective advice on my finances. And I am a financial planner who still has a financial planner, because I believe, like, even though I have, like you said, multiple degrees, certifications, et cetera, and I do this for a living, it's really hard to be objective about your money. Money is emotional. And that's the thing that we all like have a really hard time separating, is like these emotions that go with, I want this thing. I need this for XYZ. And it was the same way I was discussing with the business budget. It's like, I knew better. I knew the numbers weren't adding up, but I was like, I'm so emotional about making this thing work and figuring it out and having the best product for my client. Like, I needed somebody to step in and be like, Lauren, nope. Girl, get your life, get rid of some of this stuff. And, this is how we're going to get profitable. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask for advice. Get advice, value the advice of an expert. But even if you don't have an expert in your life, talk to your friends about money. It's so important to be having money discussions. And it's not about the numbers. It's not about, girl, how much do you have in your bank account? Or, how much are you worth and all that. It's about the strategies. What is your 401k? Well, why are you putting money in there? Like, oh, I didn't know the max was 18. Like, just talk to people about what they're doing, so that you can also find out what's the best strategy for you and customize a plan that works for you.
I love that. So Lauren, can you tell our listeners like some of your favorite resources, or where they can even check out more from you if they want to learn more about how they can take control of their financial lives?
Yes, I would love to help you get your life together financially. You can go to worth-winning.com. But if you feel like you're not ready for a financial person to come in your life and get you together, and you want to get yourself together, one of the apps that I love a lot is called You Need a Budget. It is amazing and it's easy to use. It's if you're down with using technology, it's a great way to start getting a budget, because I think that is point number one of building a strong financial foundation, is knowing where your money is going. Because if you don't know where it's going, then you're going to be wondering where it went. So straight up, flat out.
You need a budget. I'm going to check that one out. So let's go to our lightning round, Lauren. This part of the interview, I'm going to give you a prompt, and I want you to just tell me the first word that comes to mind. And remember, we're sticking with our whole dreams and drive metaphor. Okay?
Okay.
The first word is park.
Park. Complacent.
Reverse.
Mistake.
Neutral.
Ooh, that's kind of complacent. Ignorant.
Drive.
Intentional.
And if you want to be a dream driver, you have to have your keys to success. So Lauren, can you tell me 3 things that you think every dream driver needs in their toolkit before they hit the road?
Yes, you need to have authenticity, you need to have values, and you need to have communication.
Which one has been the most important for you?
Authenticity, being my authentic self. And that's like, a effort every day, because like you said, sometimes you suffer from like this imposter syndrome and you're like, who am I? And do I deserve to be here? And, the same sort of things I was talking about when I was struggling with when I was transitioning, those things kind of creep in from time to time. And it's just like, well, what do I do next? And am I worthy, sort of deal? So being authentic and just meeting yourself where you are is always going to go a lot further than starting to try to be or do something else or be someone else.
Thank you so much, Lauren. This has been amazing. Can you tell our dream drivers where they can find you online if they want to connect more, follow you on social media, all that good stuff?
Yeah, so worth-winning.com. You got to put a little dash in there. Worth Winning is on Instagram, and then worth_winning for Twitter. And if you want to find Lauryn Williams, the Olympian, Lauren C. Williams is where you can look for Instagram, Twitter, and pretty much everything. So, or Lauren-Williams.com.
All right, so that's a wrap for episode 175 with Lauryn Williams. I hope you enjoyed hearing her dream driving journey as well as her keys to success. And if you love this episode, please share it with a friend. I love it when you guys are screenshotting it and sharing it on Instagram stories, texting it, emailing it. Help me grow the Dreams and Drive community. I can't do it without you. And you know that word of mouth is the best kind of marketing ever. So if you feel like you know somebody, know a community that could really benefit from Lauryn's message, share this podcast with them. Tell them to go to Dreams and Drive and explore. Tell them to go to dreamsanddrive.com and find an episode that suits them. Just tell somebody. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you to all of you guys who have been leaving reviews. I know I mentioned last week on episode 174 with Ashley Rouse that one of the things that I haven't been getting in the past few weeks has been solid ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. So I want to take the time to shout out, a review that we had last week that just really, really motivated me and helped me realize just how important and impactful this work is. And it's coming from Fun Run Guru. And it says, I'm guilty of listening to your podcast and have been going strong for months. There have been days I've been waiting for the next episode or being excited to tell my wife to listen to your episodes, even though she was the one that introduced me to you. In short, I love your podcast because it is encouraging and I have the opportunity to listen from true and heartfelt business owners. I mean, it is so real and authentic in a world full of negativity. I thank you a million times and please continue to keep this up. If you quit, I'll never forgive you. LOL. Stay blessed. Thank you so much. And that review really meant a lot to me, especially the part, if you quit, I'll never forgive you. Because listen, there are times where I'm like, why am I doing this? Is this really working? Is this really helping people change lives or helping people really take their dreams from park to drive? And it is it's so interesting to me. Just last week I was interviewed for another platform and the person interviewing me, Shalon, she said to me that my podcast encouraged her to quit her job and move and start over, and now she's in a better job and she lives in a different state. And I was like, wow, what you're doing is impacting other people and you never know who's looking up to you. That's something I always said to myself, was you never know who's being inspired by your actions, so you really have to keep going. So thank you so much, Fun Run Guru. And we did have another review last week as well, and this is coming from Emin Saj, and it says, so glad I stumbled on this podcast. Raina is such a talented interviewer and the stories and experiences presented are invaluable. I appreciate that from the bottom of my heart because I really do pride myself in just trying to be authentic and trying to be true to telling people stories. And a lot of times when you're in this podcast game, you can get really caught up in looking at what other people are doing or trying to be like another interviewer or trying to be like another podcast host. And what I realized is people, and I say people as in you listeners, come in every week and you listen because you like the podcast and you like me as well. So I appreciate that. And I'm just going to continue to really hone in on my skills and strengthen these things that you guys love about the show. So thank you guys. If you are not already part of our Dreams and Drive weekly newsletter, The Keys, I encourage you to go to dreamsanddrive.com/join. That's dreamsanddrive.com/join. to sign up for our list. And remember, I am always looking for guests, so keep putting in your pitches at dreamsanddrive.com/pitch. I have a lot of them and I haven't responded to everyone, but I'm telling you, if you submit it, I have looked at it. And when I do have opening for guests or opening for a certain type of programming, having your information in the database is really helpful, especially if I'm looking for a certain type of guest. So if you feel like you have a story that can really resonate with dream drivers, go and submit a pitch. Even if I don't respond to you right away, I'm telling you, I'm looking at it and you might be top of mind when something comes up. Lastly, guys, I want to sell out the rest of this Dreams and Drive inventory by the end of the season. I have some ideas for some new stuff, but I want to make sure I clear out old inventory before going into new merchandising. So listen, if you want some Dreams and Drive t-shirts, crew necks, or hoodies, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/shop, dreamsanddrive.com/shop. And I also will be working on some new digital products. Right now, we only have some pitch templates up, but I want to get some marketing templates, some ebooks and other materials that I think will help you along your journeys. All right. So if you want to shop, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/shop. That's dreamsanddrive.com/shop. All right, keep dreaming, keep driving, and we'll chat again in episode 176. Bye, guys.